Boker Tov, Yom Tov, Zarim Tovim, and Lila Tov, no matter where you're at. I am glad to be here today, and I am really excited about going into what we are going to be discussing for the next quite a few days, since I'm going to be doing verses 17 through 32, and it takes a long time to break down these verses through the letters and the meanings of the words to try to bring forth some sort of comprehension of what the sacred languages are telling us and trying to share with us in this day of age where we're able to see them. And this is going to be one of those long teachings. I am going to tell you that because there's quite a few words in it. And one word in particular we're going to need to go into some detail on, as it's going to be important to be able to describe this to see. You know, it's very challenging to bring some of these things forward when we have so much indoctrination that we've had to deal with. And we've also been and have had the English translation around for such a long time, quite a long time, that we have generations upon generations that have been using these words and have been teaching them, and it has been a great source of light. And so I am not trying to diminish the English translation. I'm just saying that there is much that was left out of the translations. And it's difficult to also connect. I think I had a good question the other day about having a very difficult time connecting because of the differences in the languages with the way that we perceive things. So our English language is based on a Greco-Roman mindset, which is very linear in fashion, and it's all about mind, and it isn't about heart. Whereas the Eastern cultures, which Hebrew and Aramaic are based upon, is one of those things that starts from the heart. It's not linear in thinking. And I think I've shared this before, but it's really good for inculcation as people are coming in, that we just talk for a few minutes here. So before, I shared with you about the principle of riding a bicycle. So the Greco-Roman mindset and how most of us have been raised, if we are here in the Western culture, and it's kind of fingered out, is that if we read a book about riding a bicycle, if somebody asks us, hey, do you know how to ride a bike? We would then say yes, because we read a book, but it doesn't actually mean that we did anything with the information. We just read it, so we know about it, so therefore it qualifies for us to say, yes, we know how. Well, in the Eastern cultures, especially through the Hebrew and the Aramaic thought, and hence why it's such a verb-driven language, is that if you were to ask a Hebrew if they knew how to ride a bike, even if they read about it, if they didn't do it, they wouldn't say that they know how. Because for them, everything is about intimate knowledge, about experiencing it. So their experiences, that is what qualifies them to say, I know how to ride a bike. Yes, because I have done it. So again, that is why the Hebrew and Aramaic languages are so verb driven, because they are meant for us to apply these principles to our life, to be able to activate them within, and be able to collaborate with what they are sharing, these beautiful truths that have been misconstrued and have been obfuscated and have been diminished through the English languages, because again, taking a Greco-Roman mindset and putting it with a Hebrew or Eastern culture mindset, the two actually really clash. They oppose one another. One starts in the heart, the other one starts in the head. So what I'm trying to do, my husband's trying to do, is we're trying to take our Greco-Roman mindset and have it be able to meet in the middle with the Hebrew mindset, so that we can at least see each other face to face and go, oh, I can see that. Okay, I'm understanding that now. And it's to take us out of our head and put us into the place of our heart, so that we have a loving nature, loving kindness, that we extend mercy and grace, and we can be empathic in nature to be able to assist people. Because if we do it from our head and not from our heart, then we're going to be missing the most important things of why these languages are so important for us to be able to see them today because of where we are, because we are facing such great division. And the sacred languages are all about unification because it's all summed up in the Aleph. The Aleph literally is the all. The Aleph literally says everything, taking the vision from the higher narrative, from the Shamayim, from the heaven, and connecting it to man in the lower vision. And both of those yods, that means the work and deed of our hands. So we have one reaching up and one reaching down so we can connect. And that's literally the formation of the letter Aleph, which means a strong leader. So a strong leader is one who connects from the vision above, the hand that is reaching down, to be able to give us the power, means, and direction to be able to walk out our life as the lower hand is reaching up to connect to that vision to make it something that we walk out in our life. I'm hoping that makes sense because it's beautiful to be able to have this as a foundation. As when my husband says, it's very difficult to be able to explain all when all is all. So when you're trying to break it out in fractal pieces for us to connect to, it's difficult. And that's what we're trying to do here. And this is why this shows, why we're doing the letters one at a time in the words so that we can see those fractals, to see how they come together, to create a word in the frequency that changes us from the inside out, to make us be able to have more light and be more loving and compassionate towards one another, which then allows us to unify into one, which is really what Yeshua was saying. I and my Father are one, and I really want you to be one with the Father, and I want you to be one with me. But it is our ego that separates it, and ego can cause a lot of division through pain and through suffering. And until we work through those things, it's always going to cause division. So I did want to go over just a few things about the difference between like the oneness unity and not having it. I know I have shared about mother's teaching and father's teaching about mother. If we were in a different environment and all of us had these teachings, mother would be taking us from the age of 0 to 12. And then father would be taking us into the place of maturation and education until we become married. That was how the culture was. And so this was very intimate within the family dynamics in experiential knowledge from mother and father, because of course mother would know father's teaching and father knows mother's teachings because they have the foundation and are meant to work with one another. And so a cohesive parent structure teaching the spiritual concepts of the spiritual mother and the spiritual father makes a really strong family dynamic and bonds with the children in setting forth in the way they should go. So it's important to understand that, like, mother's teaching is very much black and white in nature. And it has to be, because when we are in the lesser vibratory nature, like being a child from the age of 0 to 12, that's how we learn. It's linear processing. We need to know what black and white is. And so, even in conflict, if you have two siblings and one punches the other, again, mother's trying to teach the golden rule. How we're supposed to handle one another and treat with one another is based upon how we want to be treated. So if a mother is dealing with, I'm going to just say it's two boys because usually they're the ones that scrap, but that's not the case. My brother and I fought like cats and dogs when we were growing up too. So it's not just, boys that do it. And I'm sure if I had had a sister, there would probably be fighting as well. But when a mother has to deal with interaction with, let's say, two boys, and it's Billy and Johnny, and Billy goes in heads and punches Johnny, how is mother going to bring correction? And it's going to be like, why did you hit your brother Billy? Well, because he took my toy. And what do we do with that? And what have I shared with you before? That I'm not supposed to hit my brother. Exactly. There's not a lot of reasoning involved. Well, when we get into the higher maturation, out of the black and white, the do's and the don'ts, as mother is growing us up, then the conversation could be, okay, why did you hit your brother? Well, because he was disrespecting me and he said some very mean and hurtful things. Well, and why do you think that you shouldn't punch your brother? What do you think are the reasons why we shouldn't? Well, because that's not respectful either, and that's not really solving the problem. So there comes to the place where when we are in a spiritual immaturity state that we're looking at things at the black and white, and we have to be that way. That's the way system of duality all is. This or that, black and white, right or wrong, good and evil, all of those things. This is what helps us orient ourselves in making choices in the way that we want to go. But when we get into the spiritual maturation, we begin to reason through these things and we can see to a greater depth because we have more ability, because reason is one of the very last things in our brain development. In fact, the place of being able to know what consequences are, our brain, because I've done a study on brain, the consequence portion of our brain doesn't kick in until we're like 25 years old. So we're talking, it takes a long time to spiritually mature us. And so sometimes in when we have to deal with like pain and suffering, and when we've had to deal with things in our earlier life where we have had hurts and pains, and maybe we've had some abuse, some of us can get stuck and not being able to get into those higher maturation purposes or processing because we're still dealing with some of these traumas that hold us back. And that is actually where narcissism starts, is that it has to stay in the black and white world to make its world safe. So if I can separate things out, then I can deal with them in this fashion because I can't go any way outside of that because I have to protect myself. So when we rise up above that and we begin to see that I am you and you are me, that means we are treating people from a much different place. And so that's where empathy enters in, because I can see where you're at and I can see your pain and suffering because I recognize that it's my own pain and suffering. So it's really beautiful to see the maturation process. And if it's done properly, this is how families are healed. This is how we can have amazing marriages and incredible communities. And that is why we want to go into detail with being said in these letters, because all of that and the meanings of the letters are lost in the translation. They don't put those in. They'll just take a word and they'll use one definition of the word, but they don't take in consideration everything else that is being said. So I think it's going to be important for us to take a look and do a little bit of review. Now, this is probably going to long teaching. I am assuming we're going to probably go between an hour and a half, an hour and 45, just because there's so many words. I will try to be able to speed it up, but I also want to be able to answer questions as we go. I have some moderators in the house as well, as it's very important that I want to make sure that we keep our chat dialogue, our conversations as positive as we possibly can, encouraging one another because we're all still wrestling and we're all still in process. None of us have made it yet. I know that I certainly haven't. And I think that this is where we strengthen one another to be able to take a look at these issues and move forward in our progressive journey with one another as we help each other grow each other up. So let's go and take a look. I am going to share my work of what I did to break down some of the verses. And let me go ahead and share that. We're going to go a little bit of review. Because remember, I was sharing with you the importance that we needed to look at verse 17. For therein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith, as it is written that the just shall live by faith. And I really wanted to make sure that we understood that from the root position of the word, what was going on in being able to define what righteousness is and uprightness was that we had the aleph added on the inside. Aleph again is symbolic for God. It also means strong leader, and it means unified. It means those who have been taught, who teach, who have the staff of authority, who have a mouth that brings forth revelation. This is all connected and found within the symbol Aleph. And that's why when the translators will just translate it as righteousness and just put one word in there, they're leaving out everything else. And from the root position, you can see that if it being a kaf noon, look at how much was added. Look at how much was added to the root word. That is incredible. And I try to share that with you. And that's one of the reasons why our English translations only have about 5% of the information that was being given to us through these incredible letters that communicate to us in much greater depth, in a deeper spiritual level, for us to really comprehend what is being written to us. Paul was so profound in his writings, and he was very misunderstood, just like many of us trying to share some of these deeper things from the sacred languages, because there's other teachers out there that are doing it as well. We are usually misunderstood. And I totally comprehend, because it's a learning curve. We're trying to learn a new language, and there's principles that are in the Hebrew and Aramaic that aren't in English. So it is a huge hurdle to first clear. But once you get on the other side of it, it's like, oh my gosh, this is like incredible. So when we look at this again, righteousness and uprightness, godliness, justice is the oneness unity on the inside of us, the place where source creator, um, many people will refer to source creator as father. I say source because there's so many different names for it. And I know that with Yeshua as being under source creator has become one, that there has to be a separation. So I try to use these vernacular things to separate it out of who I'm speaking of when I'm communicating these things. So if I know my friend Jamie loves to use the word father for source, and I am total agreement with that. I refer to source creator as father as well. I just try to be respectful with my language so that more people are being drawn in and not repelled from the words that I'm using as I'm trying to translate these things. So we were talking about that part of this too is that death is being revealed to us while we've entered into our experience here. That really the revelation is that when we enter in here, we've actually entered into death, because our flesh suits have expiration dates and we are eternal beings. And so because of that, there are things that we are to learn while we are here. And we were showing how faith is going to the path of the right hand, which is entering in through the light that reveals to us um, how to be properly raised up and supported as a parent or a nurse, to build ourselves up, to be firm and faithful, to trust and believe, to be true and certain, and the process of going to the right hand of mother and the left hand of father. The two of them come together and they are in agreement in their teachings. That which needs to be revealed in the portion from 0 to 12 when we are not as mature yet. And then the dark teachings, which just means hidden, that they cannot be revealed until there's a spiritual maturation. So mother comes first. That's the path of the right hand. And we showed that manna is part of it, our daily manna, that which we take in that raises us up to overcome our fallen flesh nature. So when it goes from faith to faith, it means that as we go through this process and you've then connected to Father's teachings through maturation and his covenant of unconditional love and finding the oneness unity, which is the Mashiach anointing, the Christ anointing, then you can become a teacher of mother, which is exactly what Yeshua came to do, is he first had to instruct us the way of mother so that he could reveal that from the right hand path through one that has already elevated their flesh out of the beast ego nature, fear, pride, anger, hatred, bitterness, malice, envy, greed, all of those things, control and manipulation. So when you've raised up your flesh, then you can connect to Father in his teachings because you're mature enough to handle them, because it's not for selfish gain or ambition or control and manipulation. So that you can be marked with his covenant where you no longer judge, having entered into the oneness principle. So we did talk about it, that it was with the marriage proposal as well, and dealing with the bride and becoming the bride. And that when we finally get to the place from the first word of righteousness, uprightness, and godliness, then we entered into the place of being upright, just, and righteous. And the difference was that through this process of teaching, we then became the I, Aleph Nun Aleph, I am one through the spiritual path as I've elevated my flesh. And I'm no longer in the beast ego nature. And the difference is seeing as it, or seeing as it versus at it, becoming as is. So this is in place of is instead of at it. And hopefully that made sense and I'm not confusing anything. But if you watched the teaching yesterday, it would make much more sense. I'm just doing quick review if you're just joining in and didn't get this foundation. And the last word that we wound up on was about life, live, and save. And this actually, the first two letters formed the word that we get the name Noach, life and rest. So the spiritual path that leads us to life, where we have found the revelation of becoming one. This is producing life within us. And I shared how the yod was missing. Again, this is the Aramaic font. That the yod was missing from the middle of this word because we had it already given to us, the power that was given to us through Mother's revelation in order to have, it was given to us the power, means, and direction in order to walk the spiritual path, in order to find life so that we could enter into rest. So once we find the oneness unity with one another, when we see each other out of ourselves, and then we are having a strong connection as an empath towards one another, very much concerned about the well-being of one another because it's an invested interest. We're one. This is actually when you get into the place of rest. So there's no more striving, and hopefully that makes sense. So we're going to pop over, and this is where we're going to start getting into some of the nuts and bolts. And it could be taken as being very controversial from this point on, because now we're talking about wrath. Now, again, this is the English translation. And as I've shared with you through the letters, there's so much information that never got translated into these words that there's much lacking. So the English is only giving us about 5 to 10% at the most of really what was underneath that the Hebrews would have known because they were raised up in the language. They already knew the paleo meanings of the letters. So for them, if they were to see a word or hear a word, they already knew what the meanings of those letters were, so it didn't need to be spoken. It was just already understood and comprehended that those frequencies came together to generate another frequency of a word that was trying to translate itself into something that could be used as a verb, as an action, to put into play to change us, mold us, and shape us into making us new from where we're at. Does that make sense? I'm going to pop back over into the chat room, see if you guys have any questions whatsoever. Again, if you do, I would love to see those in all caps. That helps me. I'm not seeing any questions right now. That's perfect. I love the fact that you guys are interacting with each other in the chat room. I really appreciate that. I wish I could sit here and read all of your comments, but I can't. I can't do that and teach at the same time. So thank you for your participation. Thank you for showing love to one another and your kindness in the chat room. I really appreciate that. So let's now go into some of these challenging verses. And I'll go back into my sheet of my excavated work. And the first word that we're going to do, I'm going to try to make this a little bigger because I know that yesterday people were saying they were having a difficult time, and I understand. I'm going to increase it to 200%, and I'll have to just use my slide bar so we can see some things here. But I can edge it over a little bit like this so that I can see the root and highlight the letters for you so we can see what was added. So the very first word that was written is the word that means reveal and manifest. So again, the way the English is, for the wrath of Aloha, which is actually the Aramaic word for God, for the wrath of Aloha is revealed. So revealed is the very first word. So when we look at this, it's already telling us that there is a revelation that is starting this verse out to us. And the Gimel Lamed Aleph was the root. So what do we have added on the front? We have a word that means death. So what is being revealed to us, just like in the previous verse in verse 17, the revealing of what death looks like. Because really, when we enter into the mem, waters of chaos is part of death when we enter in here, because we are eternal beings. But the purpose, this mem is Mother's living water teachings. So again, think of the 0 to 12 maturation process in the black and white world. Mother is revealing to us her covenant, as her job is to teach the basic golden rule that When you receive her mark, when you are in this place, that means that people are safe around you, that you're not going to hurt them, that when they're around you, that they know that you're not going to punch them in the face, or they know that you're not going to backstab them, or you're not going to do ill will, because you realize that in this world, based on the law of sowing and reaping, if you are harmful or speak badly or ill with or to somebody, whether it's to their face or behind their back, it's going to come back to you. If you are going to punch somebody in the face, they're going to punch you. And they may not punch you, but they might get the law involved. And that is because we are under Mother's teaching. Mother's teaching is trying to orient us so that we learn to treat each other kindly with respect. And so that is what's being revealed to us. And the end result, as we're here entering in, is we entered into death. So we need to find life. So we are going to reveal that which was been hidden to reveal to us what the process of death is in dying to ourself and our beast ego, which would be the things in the lower nature of anger, hurt, bitterness, rage, revenge, harm, malice, gossip, slander, all of those lower vibrations. Those are going to be revealed by Mother's teaching so that we can be marked with her frequency, which means I no longer do those things. I am treating you just the way I want to be treated. And I've shared it before that the hay and the olive are always interchangeable. The hay has to come first because this letter in Paleo Hebrew means to reveal. So there has to be a revelation that comes. It's a man holding up his hands in Paleo, like, behold, hey, I've got something here. Look, pay attention. I am revealing something to you. And so we see that the revelation is now revealing the oneness principle that we are all unified as one. This is the place of the Mashiach anointing and ones that have the authority, the staff of authority, and speak revelatory words meant to uplift the family. So in the process of revealing, we've shared this before and Ken has as well, that when we enter into Mother and her teachings, what does she do? She strips us bare. Now, I see, and I'm going to share this because I've had people that have sent me concerns about how I see scripture. When I see something like this, to denude, especially in a disgraceful sense, the letters always bring a resolve. So if there's something in a negative sense, disgraceful, and somebody could say that that is a negative word, disgraceful, we want to be full of grace. So this is without grace. So to denude in a non-graceful sense, the resolve always, always, always comes from the letters. So when I say that I turn things positive, it doesn't mean that I don't recognize that there are other sides of it. Because one of the things that we learn when we are in our younger spiritual maturation is that good and evil exist at the same time. They are present. They are there. They are for us to learn from. So grace and disgrace are operating at the same time. So when I see like disgrace, I want to turn everything into grace, and the letters tell us how to do that. But the positive, because these languages are the language of the system of duality, for us to learn how to bring everything into oneness unity, there's always a dual nature in every single word. So here we have disgraceful without grace, to exile, being stripped, but it also means to reveal. So when we take the negative contents to bring grace into it, what is it telling us to do? The Gimel is saying, gather the living water teachings that are meant to instruct you, to lift you up, because the Gimel also means to lift you up through the instruction as teaching shepherds of light that will bring forth information to you, teachings that are going to reveal to you what is necessary to change and reveal. And then it morphs into this, the covenant of Mother's love to bring us the oneness unity. And we have the word not, Lamed Aleph, in here as well. So this means, so those who are not full of grace are going to be learning how to become one which is full of grace. And hopefully that makes sense. So in Aramaic, because the foundation again is Hebrew, Hebrew is the divine masculine linear, A to B to C, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, to the spiral that fills it up and allows the words and the letters to move and create. In Aramaic, that is the divine feminine, which is bringing forth. He uncovered, revealed, showed, and made known. So we are making known the oneness principle that we are supposed to find in the place when we've entered into the place of death, which is where we live right now because our flesh suits have an expiration date on them. Then the very next word is to reveal he, it, or is. So again, this is the is principle. And this word is static because when you look at the root, it is just hey vav. So this is a static form. So we are revealing that which is, meaning there is no distortion. It is in its manifested glory, which is the hey vav. So this is saying, revealing to us a revelation that we need to connect to. And through all of these letters, it was explained to us that we are getting to learn and have disclosure and discover and have made known and reveal that which was hidden, that was covered, because that was part of it, is that if something was being uncovered, it means it was covered. So there was a lot that was covered and hidden away from us from the English language. And now it's time to uncover it and discover it as disclosure to make itself known to us. This revelation that we need to be connected to and be pierced with, meaning it needs to pierce our heart. It needs to change us. Because without having a change of heart, you cannot change your mind and you will not change your walk, especially if you're on a path where you're in control and manipulation because you have no regard for another person's heart and what they are going through. And so that's what this is teaching us, is being able to be merciful with one another and be able to empathize with one another by connecting and piercing ourselves. We need to connect to this revelation. And we talked yesterday about the gur, that this is actually the sojourners, those that are not of this world but are in this world, to be a guest and also to be a foreigner, and that we're on a sojourn. And it also was talking about the potentiality of shrinking in fear and gathering for hostility. Again, these words are dual in nature. So some might be in fear because fear is connected to the beast ego nature, but we also are sojourning. So some of us aren't in fear. So the difference is that when you have fear and it's within your root and you're connecting to it, you need to be given the power on the inside, the power, means, and direction in order to raise yourself up. Because in the root of this, again, we have the gimel, which means to lift up, to gather, and to assemble at the waters that will instruct you, to give you the power on the inside, the needs that, by going through the door of the inward man, to reveal your weak and feeble places that you need to deliver yourself from, so that the resh, so that you can be raised up from your poor and destitute place, which is fear, to a first fruit leader. And a first fruit leader would be one that comprehends the oneness principle in unity. I and my Father are one. So now we get into distortion. This is where things start changing. So if we go back to lay the foundation in this verse, we are revealing something that was covered. It is, we've been stripped bare when we came in because we were born naked from our mother's womb. We were completely stripped bare. We were in exile because we came out of our lofty abode from the heavens into this lower vibrational frequency where we were put flesh suits on us. And there's a process that's being revealed to us, this oneness principle. And also gal, just to let you know, it also means a fountain. So there's a fountain that's being revealed within us. which is really coming from a revelation that we will find on the inside that we need to connect. Hence why the kingdom of God is on the inside. It's within us. That's where we find the richness of the kingdom that we are of. It's on the inside and not the outside. As my husband says it all the time, it's an inside job, it's inside work. So this is speaking to those of us that are having this revelation that's coming to us as sojourners, so that we can have power on the inside that is going to raise us up from our poor and destitute place in and out of fear, which is connected to our beast ego nature. So now we get into the place of distortion. So in looking at this word, the root of it, I'll highlight it, and I know that you may not know the letters yet, and you probably certainly don't know the Aramaic letters, but the root is Resh, Gimel, Zayin. So if we were to show it, Resh, skip over the Vav, Gimel, Zayin, that is the root of it. And when we look at the root of this word, it means trembled, was restless, angry, provoke, in maturation, the system of duality, we've raised ourselves up and we've actually brought them together and unified them because we've learned from both sides. It's not that we say that they don't exist, we just learn from both of them and we find the middle path of shalom. But when we get into this place, there is something going on which you are now distorted out of 0 point energy, and something has caused you to tremble, to make you restless, to make you angry, that has provoked you and displeased you. So there's more than just this here. So even the translators and what they put in the Peshitta are leaving out this root for us to understand what is going on within here. And even with knowing this, the resolve always comes from the letter. So we need to find what raises us up out of our poor and destitute place of being angry and having been provoked and being displeased, trembling and being restless, so that we can rise above it by gathering the teachings that are necessary, that are going to be the sword and the plow. The sword are things that are going to pierce us to get us out of being restless and angry and being provoked, but it's also the plow. And the plow comes in and makes fertile soil so that we can change, cut off the things that do not serve us any longer. Like anger doesn't serve us any longer. Anger is a lower vibrational frequency, and we have plenty of that in the world right now. We need to rise above that. So this can be a weapon, or it can be an instrument of plowing and turning up our soil to make it fertile for seed to be planted for new growth and new life to come. And so this is also letting us know that in this, there's a piercing of the heart. So something happens to put this now into motion to make us feel like there's indignation and anger because it pierced us in our heart level. Something happened to us in our heart level. And this hay has been added because it is Father's teaching that is going to reveal to us why there is a sword to us. Because anger and wrath are not becoming. Because again, we were talking about the oneness principle. If we have anger towards someone, expect that you're going to have an angered response come back to you. If you want peace and shalom, offer that, and peace and shalom will come back to you. So this is really identifying the sword or the plow. And Father's teaching will allow you to distinguish. Remember, I was saying how 0 to 12 does not have the ability to reason through. So they see everything black and white. But when you get into Father's teaching, since the hay is on the Father's side of his revelation, this allows you to reason as to what is going on. What happened? Why did I get moved? Why am I restless? Why am I angry? Why did I get provoked? And look at this too. this is important to associate this with as well, because again, it is dual language. To quiver with any violent emotion, especially anger or fear, but it also means to be excited or excitement. So, excited being very enthusiastic and eager, and excitement a feeling of great enthusiasm and eagerness. So when we see that that is part of this, well, that wasn't even put on here as an option, because even excitement takes us and distorts us from the place of shalom, because you're overly excited, which means you've got all kinds of activity going on in your life. There's all kinds of hormonal activity, and it's I get that way. It's like I'm a champagne bottle when I get excited. But really, it's taking me out of that place of shalom, of the peaceful waters, because I get overly excited. And there's been times I get overly excited about something and then I can't sleep. Well, that's definitely moving me out of my place of shalom. So that is part of it too. That realizing that the sword and the plow is going to cause something that if you're overly excited, it's going to keep you from peace and you're not going to be able to sleep. And when we see something here, usually what will happen that causes us to be provoked and restless and angry is because of this right here, the Resh Gimel. It has a Vav added. So this means something that is connected within your heart that has desire, a longing for and yearning, and even lust and lusting after. If you have strong desires and you're longing and yearning for something and it has pierced you, it can cause all of this to happen as well, because that means that you are not in the place of peace of where you're at right now in your moment. There's something that you're longing for that is moving you out of shalom, and it's keeping you in a poor and destitute place, and we need to rise up out of that. And that's why, like yearning and lusting, these are really, really low vibratory nature on the Hawkins scale in the levels of consciousness, because we're supposed to come to the place of peace that goes beyond all understanding, which is the Mashiach, the Christ anointing within us and activating it. So all of this will keep us from that. But the Father's revelation is coming to identify to us what is causing us to be distorted out of our peace. And this, now connect to this, because this revelation is coming to us, Mother is saying that the door to God must be opened and you must enter in through her teachings, which is meant to deal with all of this. Because if you want to access God, what is going to be keeping you from that is that your anger. Your anger is not allowing you to enter in to oneness. Again, Aleph Lamed Hey is the root for God. So it is the door into oneness, becoming one with the strong leader teaching shepherd as God, that is going to be revealing to you the oneness principle. Because anger and fear and wrath is going to keep us from entering in. This Aleph was added. This Dalet and Aleph were added to the word for God. So it's the door to God is oneness, oneness unity, where I see you as me and me as you, and I care about you and what you're going through, and you care about me and what I'm going through, because we are all as one. This is really where we can bring peace in the earth, when we all can get to that place. All right, so let me take a look and see how we are, see if you guys have any questions. I don't know why I'm not seeing the chat room here. That's very interesting. It kind of popped me out, and I have no idea why it would pop me out, but it did. So I have no idea, guys, what you're saying. Oh, now I can see it. All right. So now I just popped out to see what's going on, see if you guys have any questions. And scrolling through, and I see that there is one here. I think so. The feelings of sorrowfulness comes from sorrow, regret, as in repentance. I have gotten so much stronger holding anger, but at some point I'm pushed and no longer care until later. I try so hard. Yeah, I understand that. Anger is a very, very strong hold on us. And forgiveness, it's interesting because anger comes, there's two camps. It's fear and love. And you can see this over and over in the sacred languages. They are strong motivations and they are polar to one another because we know that perfect love casts out all fear. So perfected love on one side and fear on the other. Anger actually comes from the fear camp. And so there is something that is attached to our ego, and anger is trying to protect us because of something that happened and wounded us that caused us to shrink out of our love. And so repent and forgiveness comes from the word shuv, which means to turn and to settle as if married. And it is really the process of turning away from fear and turning towards building love. That's what it is. So choosing to take our anger and turning and trying to take that energy to build love. That's what repentance is all about. So hopefully that was something that could help assist you. And it does take time because you have to go through all of these emotions. You have to identify it. You have anger. You have to ask yourself why you have anger. Where is it coming from? And then be able to work through it, feel it, release it, which is the act of forgiveness. And then as you let it go, you've turned now towards love. And it's as if the offense never happened. It doesn't mean that if you had somebody that hurt you, doesn't mean that you don't set up boundaries. Unconditional love does not mean that you don't have boundaries. It means that I love you regardless. But if you're not operating in a place where you haven't matured past the golden rule and you're still hurting people, then I have to set boundaries up. But I love you. So I want to explain that as well. It is a work in progress. All of us are in a work in progress. So now let's go back into what is being shared because we're going to continue moving on. Now that we dealt with that, let's look and go a little bit deeper. We have another static word that is men, and we've shared this before, that this is the word for manna, whatness. And it's asking questions. This word right here, it denotes separation as well of to be a part of like a stringed instrument. So this word in manna is telling us, helping us in the system of duality, in what is separated, but also being a part of at the same time. And that is because we entered in through the waters of chaos and we were given fallen flesh, because the noon represents flesh, the seed life. It has to do with the things that we do while we are here living, to build a strong base. Talks about perpetuity, a strong base to stand upon. And in the noon, the fallen noon, there's also a risen noon that you don't see. And it's noon, vav noon are the constituent letters. So it's saying that the spiritual path is connected to our fallen flesh in this material world. And that is what we are to seek and find in our daily manna, that which we eat, where we're asking questions. What is this? What is this life? What is this fallen flesh? We will get the answers from the living water teachings through the sacred languages of Mother Father in the two points of maturation. Then we have the word heaven, from heaven, to be a part of, to be separated from heaven or to be a part of heaven. And we have the waters of chaos that are presented first that separate us from the waters above while we're in our fallen flesh. And the root comes from the ma, but also the same gematria of hem if we reverse the orders. So instead of being in the waters of chaos that are to bring a revelation to us, when we get that revelation, we then are now entering into the waters above, the waters of peace, where we have abundance and wealth, because we are no longer in the waters of chaos because we've risen above the chaos. And the system of duality is very good about producing chaos for us to learn from. It's all about catalysts. So then we are to be a part of heaven or to be separated from heaven. Well, let's take a look at the way it is from the divine masculine. From the Hebrew perspective, it's the word shamayim, and in the Aramaic, it is shemaya. So shamayim, very interesting, because we have two letters here that represent fire and water. And this is the consuming fire that purifies us, or it burns away the beast ego nature, all of those lesser narrative or energies of fear, hatred, bitterness, anger, control, manipulation, greed, lust, pride, etc. All of those things that are service to self and not service to others. This is burning up the lesser ego nature, the beast, so that the waters of purification can come and rinse us clean and setting us apart. But here we have mayim, we have the word for water. This is mem yod mem. This is mother's waters of chaos that presents to us a vision so that we can be part of the waters of shalom. This is mother and father that have connected through a common vision. And this is the covenant of the pieces, where we are walking between mother and father that have been divided for us to mature. Our 0 to 12, where we enter into the age of accountability, learning how to become the bride, and then entering into father's teachings as the bride to enter into intimacy in becoming clean in the day of marriage, which has to do with Malki Zedek, the priesthood. The Malki is king and queen that have been empowered. Zedek is righteousness, king and queens of righteousness. So we need both of these, but we need to burn up our beast ego nature first, which is the brazen altar, and the only sacrifice that is to be made is our lower beast ego nature. So in becoming part of the heaven or the sky, the waters above, elevating our consciousness, we have the word Shem, which means name. You might have heard people refer to God as Hashem. The Jews do this, Hebrew roots, Messianics, they will call God Hashem, and it is the name. And so when we look at this, I love this because it is, let me slide over here if I can get it to move. There we go. It is the idea of a definite and conspicuous position, appellation as a mark or memorial of individuality. So when we talk about the oneness principle here, we're not talking about losing our individual nature. I mean, that's what the ego is. It says that we're separate, but there's a healthy form of it and a non-healthy form of it. The non-healthy form is meant to go onto the altar where we burn it up on the altar of our heart through love, for our love of self and love of others, meaning that we care about our own maturation as well as how we are going to be seeing others around us. So we burn up the lower ego nature, and then we enter into the waters of completion where we're out of chaos. Because that beast ego nature, through anger, bitterness, hatred, malice, control, manipulation, that is going to bring nothing but chaos in your life. And you might think that you're trying to bring control and order, and this is usually what happens in people that slip into narcissism. They're trying to bring control and order in their life, but really, because they're still in that lesser nature, they just create chaos all around it and they can't see it. But they really want to be in the place where they have peace, but they have to force it and control and manipulate it to happen. So this is burning up the lower nature. Shin Yod Nun is the constituent letters, dealing with the lower, being powered to deal with the lower flesh so that we can enter into Father's completed waters. And it means, if it's a mark and a memorial of individuality, by implication, it means honor, authority, in character. And this is talking about fire and water. Two opposing things, but are necessary for our maturation. Fire, mother's teaching, really, because that's what she's trying to do, to tame us so that we can enter into the water's teachings and being purified. And I hope that makes sense. So when we take a look at it written in the Aramaic, so again, this is the divine masculine principle, linear in thinking, then we enter the divine feminine, and we see that we have me, we have waters. This is actually water in Aramaic and Hebrew as well. And it is something that is bringing forth a seed life. As you can see that there's a euphemism on this word too, that it is a seed life that is being presented to bring forth the oneness unity. But we have to go through our individual cleansing process through the water and fire in order to be given the power to enter in and connect to the oneness unified principle. So that is, and this is static form. This is as is. This is what the heavens is all about, the higher consciousness levels. When we have raised ourselves up through this process, this is as is. The next word, so from heaven, we have the word on, about, and concerning, Ein Lamed. And when we look at this, even though it's in a static form, what is it saying? The Ein means the eye to see, the fountain in the landscape, to see the picture, the big picture, the purpose of the living teachings, the letters of light, the teaching shepherds that come to instruct us, which really it's the language, it's the letters. You might have a teaching shepherd to come to present things, and there's nothing wrong with being a teacher. If you have learned something, if you're a mother, you teach your children, you're a teacher. If you are helping and assist somebody and they need to know how to make an apple pie and you know how to make it, you're teaching them. So there's nothing wrong with us teaching that which we learned. We just need to know that if we are allowing somebody to teach us, we need to know the purpose as to why they're teaching us, to be able to see it. Because otherwise, if that purpose can't be clearly demonstrated and given to you, which should be through a vision to say, hey, there's something that I'm trying to present to you, and you're only going to teach people who want to be taught. You don't go and teach people if they don't ask, because then that's control and manipulation, and that's service to self. So this whole thing is concerning about knowing the purpose and seeing why the instruction is coming to begin with. And this comes from the primitive root, which means to ascend. So right there, for those who want to knock the ascension process, well, it's in the language. It's about us to become higher or to actively mount, to go up the mountain, to ascend out of our lower beast ego nature. And it's steps, collectively stairs, as in standing steps, one step at a time. And we do that, really the ascension process happens when we receive the Father's teaching. Mother's teaching orients us while we are here in this lower realm, in the system of duality. Father's teaching helps us to ascend up and out of it. This is why I've said many times that we're talking about the second Exodus. The reason why Moses didn't want to go over into the quote unquote promised land is because he would be crossing over to the same stuff, because the people that were with him were not ready to ascend out of their maturation process. They were still in like the mindset of the spiritual practices of a 0 to 12-year-old. Still had duality, they still had warring, they still had fighting. They hadn't found the oneness unity. He knew that he was originally to take them to move them up, to ascend up and out of the lower world and the lower kingdoms of the world that are always based on the beast ego and trying to steal resources from one another, based on survival in the lower frequencies. He didn't want any more of that. So he wasn't going to go, because he already saw the pattern of going up. And that's what this is all about. Our ascension process, seeing the purpose of the instruction coming, so it would be revealed to us how to ascend up and out of our beast ego nature into the waters that are above, that are upon us, instead of the ones that we are in the waters of below. Again, we're sojourners. We're not of this world. We're simply in it, walking through it, ascending up and out of it and learning. And this is meant for all, concerning everyone. Kaf Lamed is the root, and it means all and whole. So if you want to become whole, then this is telling us the Kaf is grasping a hold of the power through the sacred languages that are going to instruct you and bring revelation to you. Now remember, this revelation, we started out that the very, very first word, we can't lose track of the very first word. This word means to reveal the instructions. It's revealing us to emigrate and revealed and disclosure. That's all still going on. Like I said, this is a very long verse, and this is meant for everyone. Well, this root This is really interesting because this root in Aramaic, this word, but this root in particular, kaf lamed, means bride and crown. So this is referring, now, this is referring to those who want to be the bride who will receive the crown. The crown happens in the day of the wedding when you become queen, aka king and queen. Melchi, Malik, king, queen of righteousness, Melchizedek's. So we have to grasp a hold of the speech that's bringing revelation. It's not the lower speech. This is a risen cough, not a fallen cough. This isn't the fallen language. That is the alpha language that is trying to control us and keep us in the limited state that we are in, but one that has a vibratory nature that changes us, that instructs to us and reveals to us that we are the bride in the process of becoming crowned. So this is a message for the spiritually mature because you've already entered in past the age of 12. So you've already understood the system of duality. Now you're in the process of it being revealed to you how to render it and make it clear into one, into the oneness unity, where we no longer see each other as so separate, that I see you as me. So the things that I'm experiencing, you're experiencing, so that we can have a greater love for one another. And it comes from Kalal, to complete and to make perfect. So it's grasping a hold of the twin instructions, the lights from mother and father that complete us and make us perfect. And if you see, it's a bride from Kalal as perfect, because you've learned the instruction of mother and you've entered into the age of accountability. Now we get to some of the stuff that people are going to see is controversial. I'm going to pop back over and see if you guys have any questions. I'm looking to see if there's anything here. I don't see any caps. I'm scrolling really fast. So if you guys have any questions, please put them in caps for me. If not, I love the fact that you guys are interacting with one another. That's really awesome. So since we don't have any questions, we need to go into this word where it is unrighteousness and iniquity. I'm going to pop back over into my screen. If it's going to allow me to do that, I don't know how to pop over there except for doing this. Sorry about that. Still learning all these little buttons I need to push. All right, so the root of this is Ein Vav Lamed. Ein Vav Lamed. So what do we have? What has been added is all on the Father's teaching. So this has to do with the subject matter for those who are spiritually mature. We're not talking about those that are in the lower vibratory nature of Mother's teaching, of the black and white, the 0 from 12, but those who can reason. That's what this whole thing is about, is revelation is coming, but you need to connect to Father in meekness, where you have power under control while you are in the flesh, and it's going to be dealing with our lower flesh nature. There's something that's being revealed to us, and they've translated it as unrighteousness and iniquity. And I want you to see that the way they look at this, and this totally makes sense, because Mother's teaching, again, if she's teaching you how to properly orient yourself with other people, the root in the Aramaic means to harm, cause hurt, wrong, commit wrong, or to do evil. Now, if you have an added hey or aleph on the backside, which we do, it means an unjust person or a wicked one or an unjust one or unrighteous. But it also means baby, child, and infant. So what this is saying is that if you're in the place where you're supposed to be mature, Father is going to reveal to you, and again, the meekness, it already comes from a place of humility, power under control, that you are operating in your fallen flesh, because it's connected to that you're being a child. Because only children, those of the lower vibrational frequencies, are those who are still going to cause harm, hurt, wrong, commit wrong, or do evil. Mother is supposed to have taught that. But there are those that are past the age of 12 that still do this. So they still haven't even learned the way of mothers. So they're still considered as a baby or a child or an infant. And Father's going to reveal that to you because you're supposed to be in the place of maturation because this is a mature message. It's through his teachings. So in other words, you need to be accountable. You are accountable because you have entered into that place of responsibility and accountability. And it's going to be revealed to you that you're acting like an infant, like a child. So when we take a look at it, taking it into the Hebrew, at least the Aramaic is nice to say it's a child out of infant and baby, as the divine feminine would say. But in the masculine, in the linear sense, it's a sucking child, an infant, a nursing babe. So when I was looking at some of these words, it's like, well, we need to define this. So when we talk about distort, we're going to talk about distort, moral, and proper, because some of these things have been defined by conditioning. So what does it distort? To pull or twist out of shape. And so remember, we were talking about anger before. So the term being bent out of shape means to be angry or agitated. So again, when I was talking about distortion of what is being shared all the way back up here, the anger and wrath, this is the place of distortion. So now we're talking about, this whole thing is about the spiritual maturation, and that if you are pulled out of shape, connected to being angry or agitated, an angry person will be angry at other people, or a hurt person will hurt people, because we're supposed to grow up out of that. So moral, concerned with the principles of right and wrong behavior, duality, and the goodness or badness of human character. So again, it is dealing with the system of duality. So this is saying you needed to deal with the system of duality. And if you're still operating in the place where you're causing hurt, wrong, or committing wrong, is because you never learned the golden rule from mother and you're still stuck as a child. So then we have proper. So what is proper? Truly, what something is said or regarded to be as genuine, of the required type, suitable and appropriate, according to or respecting recognized social standards or conventions, respectable, especially excessively so. So being respectable has to do something with being proper. So if we're respecting one another, that is being proper. So in this proper conduct, we are to learn from mother the golden rule. So anything that is the opposite of that is causing harm and hurt. That's not respecting one another. And if you are still doing those kind of things, then you are considered as a child. You haven't grown up. And it will be shown. Father is going to show you, and it's going to be revealed that you are connected to your fallen flesh and you're acting as one who is not mature. Hopefully that makes sense. So when we look at the letters, it's to see that which you've connected to on the inside of your heart that is supposed to teach you and reveal to you. So this is, again, has to do with the inside job of the condition of your heart, because that's where all the emotions come from. And even dealing with injustice, lack of fairness. Again, all of this is coming from a place of being in the lesser. I also found it interesting that when I was looking at things, I want to share with you, if I need to change my screens. Okay, it's not going to do it that way. I have to go through, change my screen so you can see it. I wanted to show you what the definition of evil is through etymology. It's going to give me, oh, I popped out of it. Well, I guess we don't need to share it. The moral depravity in wickedness was not established as a meaning of evil until the 18th century. Some of the meanings meant to be unskilled. So if you were unskilled in anything, you were considered evil. And that makes sense when we look at it, because even in the word definition of being an infant or being a babe, understand that being an infant or a babe has the same vibratory nature as being evil. Well, how is that possible? It's because we're in the system of duality. A child has a whole lot of potential. They can grow up being evil or they can grow up being good. So they have to be instructed. That's why it was Ein Vav Lamed, to see and to know, to connect in the heart, the instructions to raise you up from being a child and an infant, sucking on the milk of the word, black and white, to get into the maturation process that is going to reveal to you whether or not you are still a child or whether you've matured. I'm hoping that makes sense. I'm not seeing many comments at this point. I'm hoping that you guys are still, maybe you're just processing, because I'm not seeing you guys talk, or something's wrong with my chat. Oh, anyway, so let's pop back into it. I'm hoping that you're tracking with what I'm saying. So really, that whole thing has to do with our maturation and where we are at, if we're growing up or we're not. So when we get into wickedness and ungodliness, here's another word that needs to be defined. When we look at the root of this word for wickedness and ungodliness, we have resh shin. I don't know why that just popped me up. It's resh shin ein. So look at this letter here, skip over the vav, shin ein. That is our root. And notice again, we have a connection with mother, we have connection in the heart, and we have connection with father. And when we add all of these together, we actually get 18. And the number 18 through toroidal math is a 9, which means completion. So we flip our 6 nature, because the vav is connected to 6, and we flip it into a 9 when we've connected with mother's teaching, we've connected in our heart, and we've connected with father's teaching. So again, all of this has to do with catalysts in provoking us, because father's teaching is going to reveal, just like above, if you are an infant and a child and you are hurting and harming people, and you're in your anger and your bitterness, you are still in a place where you are a child, you haven't matured. So let's see where this is coming from. So in the root, acting wickedly to do evil, to be impiously practice. Impiously means not showing respect or reverence. So that's what this root means. So even if you're not respecting, that's part of this word. In what they would translate as wickedness and ungodliness. Well, right, because you're not, if you have no reverence, reverence means deep respect. And that's what we are trying to have for one another in learning. Mother raising us up so that we can learn to respect one another, care for one another, care for the emotions and the feelings of what we go, and honoring one another. So if you are disrespectful or not showing reverence, it falls in this category. So we can point the finger at other people, but if you are bringing harm and you are not showing respect or reverence for who the other people are in your life, then this falls into that category as being wrong. Because again, their mother's teaching, she's the door to get us to God, to Father, to Source. And there are standards that we need to be kept, because you can't be a strong leader, teaching shepherd if you're going to hurt and harm people. That's the exact opposite of it. Now look at this. So this comes from a root that means to disturb and to violate. What is violate? Well, break or fail to comply, fail to respect, to treat something sacred, or to treat with irreverence, or to disrespect. And this even can talk about sexual assault. To treat violently. So this is the opposite of love. Anything that is not of love, and you can see, fail to respect is part of that. Disturb, to interfere with the normal arrangement for functioning of, to cause to feel anxious, to interrupt sleep or relaxation or privacy of. So to disturb, again, this is another word that gets us into the place of distortion where we're not in shalom anymore. But this is very important for us to see what this is dealing with specifically, because the first letter has to do with the resh, which is specifically speaks about leadership. So we're all leaders to a degree. It just depends on the size of um, the people that we're influencing, your circle of influence. If you're a parent, you're a leader because you have children. If you are a teacher in a school, your classroom, you're doing that. If you're in politics, if you're a boss on the job, if you're a manager, everyone is a leader of some sort. It just only matters. The size of your circle of influence is the only thing that differentiates. You know, if you're single and you have a dog and you don't have any interaction with anybody else, well, you're a leader over that dog. We are all a leader of some sense, way, shape, or form. And that means that there's a higher responsibility. So if you are in a poor and destitute place, which means you're in the lower vibration, you are meant to raise up. But if you're in the lower vibration and you are doing things that show disrespect and you are hurting and harming people, the consuming fire is going to come. The consuming fire is coming to deal with you, to deal with your lower beast ego nature. So you think about it. There is the law of sowing and reaping. So if you are doing things that you are failing to respect, you've disrespected, you have irreverence, you are doing things that are bringing harm to people, you're disturbing them. Well, there is the spirit of mother that is going to correct you, and she will use the things of this world to bring correction. Sometimes that's jail time, sometimes that's fines. It can be a lot of things, but it's meant so that you can see your ways, that what you are doing is causing harm. So the fire is going to come to open your eyes. That is the whole point of it. And it's meant to pierce you. It's meant to correct you. And mother is participating and father are both participating. They are connected to this to reveal to you, because now you are way past mother's correction, because we're showing that from above, that this, if you are now still causing harm, hurting, and committing wrong, and you have lack of fairness and you're distorting, it is father that's going to come and bring this revelation to you. You are now past mother. You are now dealing with father for correction. And I think it's very interesting that Resh Vav Yod, it's from Rosh, or the same as Rosh, a poisonous plant or poison, because you are meant to connect on the inside, that we are all one, raising us up from our poor and destitute place, and we have fire, the head of fire. So think about the fire that came upon the heads in the upper room. That was heads of fire that were meant to be leaders, that were of one. Ra also means the eyes to see. The purpose of the consuming fire that raised them up from their poor and destitute place. The head is easily shaken. And I also find this is very interesting too, that as this is talking about being the head, first, top, in place, time, rank, etc., I wanted to show you that there's something else that's in here. This Vav, Shin, Resh is the same gematria for Shua, which is the root of Yeshua. So again, Jesus is his transliterated name in English, and Yeshua is what he was actually called, or Yeshua, where the ein is like a swallowed sound. But there's a frequency involved with who he was and what he brought. And this word right here, this gematria, if it was spelled, so it has the same frequency, it is part of this word, It means to cry for help. So those who are doing these things, cries of help are being issued forth from those who have been hurt and harmed, from those that are causing problems, especially if they're in leadership, because they should know better. So anyone that is in leadership that is not respecting, there are the people that are under you that are crying out for help. Whether you hear it or not, they are. And it's going to be revealed to the Father, and the Father is going to be revealing to you that you are in your fallen flesh and you have not matured. You are still an infant and a child. And this is, remember, this was connected to all human beings. I find this interesting that the root of this word is anash, and the anash, it would have been right here, but the yod was put in place. But look at the stuff that's been added here. We have bani, which is son, son of man. That should be connecting some dots, because son of man has been used in many times in speaking of the prophets, even connecting to Yeshua, and he is our brother, which interesting because Ben is son, and brothers and sisters being begotten. But we have the word dob in front as well, and you've heard Ken and I speak of Mother Bear. And Mother Bear, she might be slow, but she moves slowly and she glides, and her whole purpose is to become the door to the revelation, to open it up to you so you can build yourself on the inside, so that you can become a son who builds. Son, builder of the family name, we were talking about Shem, comes from the word bana, to build literally and figuratively. And this is building ourselves through the spiritual path that gives us power, that is given to us. Now, this is coming from Mother, because she as son, because again, through the frequency, you go from son to daughter. And we've shared this in many teachings before, that you first have to start your building process as a son, which is the divine masculine, linear in fashion, that gives you the power so that you can then enter into the divine feminine. But it has to happen first. Mother is going to come and do that. And she's going to be like a bear. She's the gatekeeper. But she's going to put you on the spiritual path so that you can build. And she's going to give to you, if you reach out your hand to receive, she's going to give you the power, means, and direction to do what? To lift you up. That is what we have right here. To lift you up. Now it's interesting because this word can mean to lift up, but it can also mean to lend on interest and usury. And it also means to lead astray. So her job is to teach you what is necessary to build you up, to put you on the spiritual path, the power that is going to raise you up from a place if you've been led astray. Because really, the fire coming from Father and Mother is consuming everything of the lower beast ego nature. So if you have concern for someone and the path that they're walking, there is no need to bring correction, because the Mother and Father are going to do it just fine. The whole earth is set up under the instructions to raise us up, to lift us up out of those lower natures. And that's why there's no fallen noon here. It's all risen noon. Because humanity is meant to raise up out of the lower beast ego nature. And how is it done? Well, we have the covenant of the pieces again, noon, yod, noon. We had it with Ma'im, mem, yod, mem. Now we have noon, yod, noon. So the spiritual path that brings power is the same that will give you the power from the spiritual path of Father, Mother and Father that have been divided, to walk in between the consuming fire, the seraphic message that is meant to lift you up and lift all of mankind up. That is really powerful if we can just grab a hold of it and understand that usury and debt, that is all of that is meant to lead us astray, to put us in debt under someone as a slave. Because this is all about lifting us up. What was I sharing before about being queen, a bride and queen? That is so that we can raise up to become sovereigns, because king, queen, that means a sovereign. A sovereign being isn't under anything of usury, and debt has meant to enslave us. So these teachings are teaching us how to become sovereigns so that we can stand on our own. And then we have the word lo and behold, but it's talking about they, that, those, and who. Well, what were we talking about these, that, those, and who? All of humanity. To raise them up, because anash means weak and feeble. So this is to raise us up from being the weak and feeble ones to becoming ones that have been raised up to become sovereign beings. And what do we have here? Hey Vav. Hey Vav is the root. Hey Vav is the root. My cat's trying to get out, and I only have 2 more words. So I think the cat needs to stay here until it starts meowing, and then I'll let him out. Hey Noon means lo and behold. It's a standard of measurement. And noon means fish. Noon Vav Noon. This is the constituent letters that make up the symbol, the noon. This is the spiritual path that is connected to our fallen flesh suit. They are one and the same. They are connected to one another. So this is saying, lo and behold. Remember the hey vav in the beginning that was just static that we need to connect to? This is now saying revelation of the spiritual path needs to be connected to if you're in your fallen flesh suit. Because the new spiritual path is found on the inside of you. And yes, the cat wants out. Hold just for a second. Come on. Come on. Go outside. Thank you. Everybody thanks you, Tikva. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Sorry about that. I love my cat, but cats, I swear they train us. They train us. We don't train them. I'm still not seeing any questions. Are you following along? Do you have questions? Or are you guys just being quiet listening? Because it stopped a long time ago and I'm not seeing anything new. So either my messenger is wrong or you guys are just listening. So finishing up with standard measurement, that there's a relation of the spiritual path that we're being measured to that is connected to the material world in our fallen flesh suit. Lo and behold, this is going to be revealed to us and it's important to us. Then we have the very last word, truth and verity. And this is really important for us to be able to see this as well. Because, let me get us back to here. Koshet. This is from the Hebrew word koshet, which means a reality, to balance, and equity. So this is why I was saying that mother and father's teaching in the system of duality is meant to bring balance so that we can find the narrow path between the two in understanding the system of duality from the place of immaturity, where we're just looking at the black and the white only, to the place of maturation, where now we can reason and we're not just held to the black and white standard, because this is really where sovereignty lines up. They need to be in the black and out of the black and white, out of the dual system, to be able to render everything clear so that there is no bias and no distortion either way, because they can see both clearly. So this word in Aramaic means truth and verity, but it's from kroshet. So what is being added? We have the dalet on the front, so mother being the door. We have the yod in the middle, which means a heart that is pierced. And we have now the tet has changed to the tav. And we have the aleph on the suffix as well, which means entering into the oneness unity. So this in its root form, because we have the dalet added, it means this is truthful. And the root is truth, truthfulness, and right. So with the tav or the tet, this means the place of wrestling with the snake in the basket and the mud in the world, where you're surrounded. What are we wrestling with? With the seraphic message meant to raise us up and out of our beast ego nature, out of the system of duality, rising above it so that we can be marked with the Father's covenant of unconditional love. Again, unconditional love doesn't mean that you leave the mother's portion of conditioned love behind, because you still have to set up boundaries, because there are still people out there, as we saw above, that are still in the hurt place, and they're going to be hurting people, and they are going to be doing things that are disrespectful, that would be considered what would be evil. Disrespect, not having reverence, hurting, committing wrong, causing harm, disturbing, distorting. So we have to have boundaries set up, because not everybody's there yet. But the goal is, the reality is, the matter is that we are all one. And what do we have here? So Mother is the door that opens this revelation to us, to show us our weak, feeble, and lean place, so that we can deliver ourselves from it, so that we can compress light within the circle of time. Through that which was once hidden, that is now revealed, between the light and the dark, finding the narrow path, producing more light within us, connecting us at our heart level, on the inside, piercing us. Because we went through the fires that dealt with our lower flesh, beast ego nature, all the lower frequencies, pain, guilt, anger, hurt, malice, control, manipulation, greed, all of those lower vibration frequencies, we put on the altar of our heart and we burn them up, our lower east ego nature, so that we could be marked with unconditional love, because we no longer judge. We do not judge anyone else, because we see them as us. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Because we can see them, we can see their struggle. We have compassion and love for them. And that's what allows us to enter into the oneness unity. So the truth is that we are all one, but we are going to have to wrestle with it. We are going to have to wrestle with it, because this is reality. And I think it's interesting too that we actually have the word Shin Tov here in the middle, which means a foundation and a basis, to set, to put into place the oneness unity. It also means the posteriors, the buttocks, the leg with the buttocks as our foundation. So this is about us standing. And if you took the first three letters, Kadush, this is actually Kadash, Kadosh, meaning holy, the same gematria. So this would be the same gematria as Kedusha, as the Aramaic form for holy and set apart, but now having the Tav on the inside, being marked with a covenant from the highest creator source, the All-Father, the All, being connected there at that level. That is incredible to be able to see. And so here we have just a few more words here. Sorry, I told you this was going to be long. Because now we get back into the same word about unrighteousness and iniquity. But look at the difference this time, guys. We have the bet. Mother is trying to help us build ourselves on the inside, because the bet means inside. To pierce us on the inside, to be able to create new life by recognizing and seeing that which hurt us, that brought harm to us, as a catalyst to raise us up, so that we could learn from it the way of one. Because the things that hurt us and harm us are from those who are separate from us, because they do not see us as themselves. So when they treat us with harm or disrespect, they're actually disrespecting themselves, because it's a mirror reflection. So Mother's supposed to help us build us on the inside, so that we can see the purpose, because we got pierced in the process and we got hurt and we got harmed. To teach us the way of one. Because if we don't learn from it, because it is Mother's teaching, she's trying to get us out of being a child and doing childish things where we hurt other people, so that we can learn that we are all one and unified. It's very interesting too that this word here has Baal in it, meaning a master, hence a husband, an owner, and to marry. So this is having to do raising us up in order to be married. So if we want to be in a bright status, the only way that can happen is we must be built up on the inside. It cannot be married as an infant or as a child. So if you're still acting in those places and you're bringing hurt and harm to somebody else, then you are a child and cannot be married. Because when the husband comes, you are not going to be allowed in. Think of the wise and the foolish virgins. I've been teaching on this for weeks. Because the foolish ones were service to self. Their hearts never got pierced. So they actually bring harm through the power that they have taken, through the covenant of father, because they never wanted to be built up by mother, because she's going to have to strip you bare to build you up from the inside out, to realize that the things that have happened, if you are doing them, then you are a child. But if you have been harmed and hurt, she's going to use those things to show you, and so is father, that they were a catalyst to see the purpose of why we need to be taught in the ways of one instead of bringing harm to one another. Because really, if you stay in this place, if you just stay in the static form of this, as one who is an infant and a child that brings harm and hurt to people and disrespect, you're going to be locked in that place. You're never going to grow up. You're never going to mature. Because what do we have here too? We have Bet and we have Aleph. And those added two together, so we've got this word Evel on the inside, Evel. Bet and Aleph means come and go. So evil is going to come and go. So just because we enter into the oneness unity does not mean that we're not aware of that which is around us. We are rising above and out of it. The second Exodus, to not partake of the lower nature, to not participate as a child, as an infant, of one that needs to grow up, because we've seen beyond it, because we've moved up and out of it and entering in, because we allowed the evil that was done to us, the harm, the hurt, the malice, to instruct us, and we still chose to become one, which love is and unifies, compassion and mercy, and all of that that brings us together, and seeing you as me and me as you, no longer separate. That means I care for you and you care for me. And look at this last word, guys. Comes from the root. That means to go one way or the other, or also to unify and to collect one's thoughts. So this whole thing is about thinking, about our thoughts. What are we producing? What kind of thoughts do we have? Because they can go one way or the other. We can stay in the place where we choose to hurt others, or we stay in the place of wanting to still be hurt, or we can rise above it and learn to become one. Because what do we have here? If the static form is a chad, meaning to unify, what has been added? We have the yod on the inside, and then we have a yod nun. But this right here means judge. Ach means brother. The brothers that have been given power to judge. And what it's talking about here is take, hold, let, kindle, apprehend, maintain, close, and detain. So if you are still in this place where you're harming people and disrespecting people, those who have risen up as one who found life, because remember, you can't forget that the very first word was the revealing of death. These are those of one that found the oneness principle, that found God, source, creator, all father, who have found life, that entered into death on life through what? Yod Dalet, through the work and deed of their own hand. They were given power on the inside. Here we have the word for life. Chet means outside, separate, and fence. But it is the symbol for life. But now we have has power. So the oneness unity are those who found life through the work and deed of their own hand, by going inward and delivering themselves of their weak, feeble, lean nature that are coming, that have been given the power from the Father to judge those who are in the fallen flesh. Because the whole purpose is the oneness unity, which is really where life begins. And this is dealing with those who bring harm and distortion to others who are seeking oneness unity, because that's really where life is. Life from death. You've heard me before that the judges are coming. Well, this is it right here. And this also is dealing with strife, because those who are not in the oneness principle, those who to bring and create strife, and they're not trying to unify, and they're trying to separate and divide, well, the door is going to reveal that you're still in your fallen flesh, because those who still do that are children. They have never matured. And I think it's interesting that in Strong's, it says primitive, Roy a straight course. And I'm looking at Roy, I'm like, okay, was that a typo? Means to sail direct. Roy might be a typo, but this actually word comes from Red King. Red is connected to Adam, mankind, one blood, king. And this whole thing I've been sharing about Melchizedek's, talking about logical deduction, law, sentence, judgment to judge. And really, what this is, our own fallen flesh is what's judging us. Because the people that show up that have become one, if you're still in the place of separation and division, bringing harm and hurt and distorting and twisting, it's going to be revealed that that's who you are. So those who come on the scene that are already in oneness, they don't have to do anything, because it's through the work and deed of your hand that will show that you're still in your fallen flesh and that you never matured. So this also means power and might. Power and might given to those who have entered into oneness unity, who care for one another, love one another, have mercy for one another, that feel for one another and have empathy for one another. The ancient Hebrew concept of a judge is one who restores life. The goal of one that rules or judges is to bring pleasant and righteous life to the people. So these judges are coming, are wanting to bring life to the people. And we have it right here. But the others who do not, that are in the lower frequencies of bringing harm and hurt, will be detained. And that's what that verse is talking about. So there's much, much greater detail. And I know that some people don't care to see, or they don't look at the letters. And I'm really sorry. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing any comments. So if you have questions, for some reason I'm not seeing, or you guys just stopped asking questions. I don't know. I still see that there's 19 of you in the room. But this whole verse in the English translation left much out. Left so much out that we can see where the distortion happened. And this is why I want to go into detail through the letters, through the meanings of the word, so that we can fully exhume, we can fully excavate what is being shared, because we're only getting 5% of the information in English. So for anybody that wants to bring English scriptures to me, understand you're only bringing to me 5% of what's being shared. And that's why I'm digging deep, because I want to be able to bring healing. Like I said, I want to be the resolve. I don't want to be the problem. I want all of us to help resolve and bring the solutions. And the Hebrew and the Aramaic, through the blueprint patterns, through the letters, show us how to do it. And that's what's so amazing. And I feel blessed to be able to see it. I feel blessed to be able to share it. And I know how much it's changed my life because of being able to love and not have fear anymore. Because I do truly love everyone. And if they see me any different than that, then that's their wrestle. And I've seen that. And that's okay, because we're all growing. I wrestle too. And if I wrestle with somebody else and they're in my life, it's usually a direct reflection of something that's going on me that I need to deal with, because we're a mirror to one another. And I'm learning that, and I continue to learn that. and it's helped refine me. But I've been able to see it in the language that's very helpful, that there is a roadmap that's available for us to follow so that we don't have to be children anymore, that we can mature so that we can enter into our place of sovereignty. So thank you for joining us. I really wish I could have seen your comments and responses. I'm not sure why nothing came through, but I appreciate you being here. I love all of you guys. Thank you for joining in. And if you have questions that did not get asked, like because I can't see them, I don't know where they went. If you want to go after the live stream when the video is posted and just type your questions on YouTube underneath the video, I get those, and so I will answer them for you there. But until then, until our next, as we move on into verse 19, again, it's laying precept upon precept, line upon line, a little here, a little there, through drips and drops. We are building this so we can see what Paul was sharing with us that is very much appropriate for today. Shalom, shalom, and namaste.